inside Goulburn Supermax, the vanishing room. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, because the deeper the story goes, the darker it gets, and trust me, you won't want to face what's coming alone. The storm hit Goulburn just after midnight, rattling the razor wire fences and flooding the yard lights with sheets of cold Australian rain. Inside the Supermax command center, alarms were silent, routines were stable, and every camera feed glowed with the same haunting stillness. But at 12:47 a.m., one small panel on the surveillance wall flickered, camera 12, the one watching the isolated administrative wing. It didn't go black. It didn't glitch. It simply rewound itself. 3 seconds back. Then 4. Then it returned to live feed as if nothing had happened. Sergeant Leah Cray didn't miss it. She'd been working that station for 8 years, long enough to know that in Goulburn Supermax, nothing ever just happens. She leaned forward, heart tapping a slow rhythm against her ribs. "Did you see that?" she asked the duty officer beside her. He hadn't. Nobody else had. And in a place where the smallest disturbance could mean a breach, Leah instantly logged the anomaly. A flickering camera wasn't just a glitch, it could be a sign of tampering. Exactly 11 minutes later, an emergency call came from the upper floor. "We can't locate Executive Director Rowan Hale." The room went silent. Goulburn Supermax wasn't like other facilities. Every door was reinforced steel. Every hallway was covered by overlapping cameras. Every movement of staff and inmates was logged electronically. Disappearances simply weren't possible. But Rowan Hale, a high-level corporate auditor contracted by the government, was now gone from a locked office, an office that required two-factor authentication to enter and exit. The windows were sealed. The doors had not opened. The access logs showed no activity. The cameras overseeing the hallway had recorded no movement. It was as if Hale had evaporated into the air. Leah arrived at the scene minutes later. Rain dripping from her uniform, she walked into the administrative wing, a place so quiet it felt detached from the rest of the prison. The office door stood open, but there were no signs of a struggle. Hale's laptop hummed softly on the desk, its screen glowing with a spreadsheet full of financial data. His jacket still hung on the back of the chair. His keycard lay neatly beside the keyboard, and yet the chair was empty. Leah walked the perimeter of the room. She pressed her hand against the glass, confirming what she already knew. The window hadn't been opened in years. Hale hadn't escaped. He hadn't been taken by force. There were no hidden exits. But then she noticed it. Something small, almost insignificant at first glance. A faint scuff mark near the lower wall, right beside a row of beige filing cabinets. She crouched, dragging the beam of her flashlight over it. The scuff was fresh, the dust displaced in a thin streak, leading upward toward the back of the cabinet. Something had been moved recently. She motioned for assistance. Together, they pulled the heavy cabinet away from the wall. A cold breath of stale air drifted out. Behind it was a panel, square, metallic, slightly recessed, and covered with decades-old paint. Leah tapped it with her knuckle. "Hello! What the hell is this?" the duty officer whispered. Leah didn't answer. She slid a thin pry tool into the seam and applied pressure until the panel groaned open. Behind it stretched a dark vertical shaft, the kind used during construction for wiring and ventilation, long sealed off and forgotten. Except it wasn't sealed. Fresh marks lined the edges. Scraped metal. Chips of broken paint. Evidence that someone had opened it recently. Leah's breath tightened. Rowan Hale hadn't vanished. He had left the room, just not the way anyone expected. But as she shined her flashlight deeper into the empty shaft, she saw something wedged near the edge. A folded paper. No, not paper. A printed financial statement, stained slightly with dust. And on the bottom corner, written in quick, messy ink. "If you're reading this, I ran out of time." Leah froze. Her pulse hammered, because the numbers on the page didn't belong to the prison. They belonged to people running it. And in that moment she realized Hale hadn't disappeared by accident. He had discovered something inside Goulburn Supermax, something someone didn't want exposed. What she didn't know was that the truth hidden in that shaft was only the beginning. Leah Cray barely slept the night Rowan Hale vanished. The hidden maintenance shaft behind his office gnawed at her mind like a splinter she couldn't reach. His last scribbled message, "I ran out of time," kept replaying in her thoughts, more like a warning than a confession. By dawn, she was back inside Goulburn Supermax, watching the first shift file and under the sterile glow of flickering ceiling lights. A quiet tension hung over the place. Administrators whispered behind glass walls. Senior officers avoided eye contact. And for the first time in years, Leah sensed fear inside the most secure prison in Australia. Fear not of inmates, but of something crawling beneath the surface. Before she could return to Hale's office, she was summoned upstairs for a confidential briefing. Superintendent Marcus Doyle sat waiting, his expression carved from stone, fingers steepled on the table. A second man stood behind him, someone Leah had never seen. He wore a gray suit, no name badge, no department markings. His presence alone felt like a locked door. "Sergeant Cray," Superintendent Doyle said, "you'll cease involvement in the Hale disappearance. Effective immediately." Leah stared. "Sir, I was the first responder on scene. I found—" "What you found is irrelevant," the man in the suit interrupted. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Rowan Hale's work involved sensitive financial audits. Higher-level teams will handle this." Leah's chest tightened, but she forced her voice to stay level. "Are you assigning an investigative unit?" "No," the man stared at and blinked. "This case is closed." "Closed." A man vanished from a sealed room, and they were closing the case. Leah's instincts screamed. She'd been in law enforcement long enough to recognize when she was being steered away from something dangerous. But she nodded, pretending compliance. She didn't argue. Not here. Not with a stranger who held more power than his silence admitted. As she left the room, she felt eyes following her, the gray-suited ghost, watching every step. Instead of returning to her desk, Leah slipped back into the administrative wing. She timed her move between shift rotations when cameras were usually reviewed less rigorously. Her goal wasn't Rowan Hale's office. She'd already studied it more than anyone knew. She needed something else. Access logs. She entered the small control alcove where server backups were stored, tucked in a forgotten hallway near the old security wing. Her clearance wasn't high enough to access primary records, but the mirrored logs, autosaves of every keycard swipe, door activation, and time-stamped entry, were sometimes overlooked. A few keystrokes later, she had them pulled up. Rowan Hale's office access log displayed exactly what she expected. No entry, no exit, no activity for 36 hours prior to his disappearance. But then Leah noticed something odd. A secondary entry, time-stamped within minutes of Hale's last known email, was listed under maintenance override. A system-level access code, not tied to any officer or staff member. Someone had disabled digital tracking just long enough to move through the administrative wing. Then something else caught her eye. Another maintenance override appeared one floor down, near the old archives. Same signature, same timing, as if someone had been moving through restricted parts of the prison unseen. Leah downloaded the logs to an encrypted drive. When she slipped out of the alcove, she nearly collided with Officer Dana Kerr, one of the newer guards, mid-20s, bright but nervous. Dana's eyes darted to Leah's pocket. "You found something, didn't you?" Leah kept her voice neutral. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Dana exhaled shakily. "I overheard something this morning. 2 senior admins talking in the break room. They said Hale was getting close. Too close. And that if they didn't contain it, everything would unravel." A cold ripple passed through Leah. "What was Hale working on?" she asked. Dana swallowed. "Prison contracts. Funding allocations. Something about a secondary budget, one that doesn't exist on paper." Leah's pulse quickened. Off-book money inside a maximum security prison was a red flag for corruption, smuggling, or something much darker. Then Dana leaned closer. "Leah, Hale wasn't the first to vanish." The hallway seemed to freeze around them. "What do you mean?" Leah whispered. Dana's voice dropped to a tremor. 6 months ago, a maintenance worker disappeared during a night shift. They said he quit, but no one saw him leave. His last known location, the lower mechanical access tunnels, the same ones connected to that shaft you found. Before Leah could respond, the overhead speakers crackled. "Sergeant Cray, report to the Central Command Room immediately." Her stomach dropped. They knew she wasn't letting it go. When Leah stepped into command, Superintendent Doyle, and the gray-suited man were waiting. But this time, there was someone else, a uniformed officer who worked the night Hale vanished. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Doyle folded his hands. Sergeant Cray, we reviewed camera 12's footage again. It seems you were correct. There was tampering. Leah raised an eyebrow. Then why shut down the investigation? We didn't, the man in the suit said smoothly. In fact, the footage revealed something important. Something we need to show you. He clicked a remote. The screen lit up. It showed the empty hallway outside Hale's office. And then, for just 1 second, a figure stepped into frame. Head down. Hooded. Carrying a hard case. The timestamp matched the moment the camera rewound. Leah leaned in. Who is that? She asked. The man in the suit paused the video on the blurred silhouette. That, he said quietly, is why this case is closed. The room felt like it tilted, because Leah recognized the posture. The stride. The distinctive limp. It wasn't a prisoner. It wasn't a stranger. It was a staff member. Someone she knew. Someone she trusted. And just before the screen went black, she saw the figure lift their head. But the recording cut off. Sergeant Cray, the man in the suit said, you will not pursue this any further. But Leah already knew she would, because whoever was hiding inside Goulburn Supermax wasn't just covering up corruption. They were eliminating anyone who found the cracks. Rain hammered the roof of Goulburn Supermax as night swallowed the prison again. Leah Cray moved through the corridors like a shadow, her badge tucked away, her pulse sharp and steady. She knew she had one chance left. If she made a mistake, she wouldn't just lose her job. She'd disappear exactly like Rowan Hale and the maintenance worker before him. She replayed the grainy footage in her mind. The hooded figure, the limp, the unmistakable tilt of the shoulders. Officer Evan Rourke, a veteran guard, 15 years inside Goulburn, a man trusted with the keys to every wing, a man Leah had shared dozens of late-night shifts and emergency lockdowns with. But 6 months ago, something changed. He became quieter, more withdrawn, more fatigued, like someone carrying a secret he was terrified to drop. And now, Hale was missing. Rourke was limping. And the higher-ups were shutting down everything. Leah made her decision. She wasn't confronting him in the open. Not inside a building full of cameras controlled by people she no longer trusted. She needed isolation, a place untouched by the surveillance grid. A place Rourke already knew too well. The lower tunnels. The same tunnels where the maintenance worker vanished. The same tunnels connected to Hale's hidden shaft. At 2:03 a.m., Leah slipped into the restricted mechanical stairwell. The metal door clanged shut behind her, sealing her in darkness. She clicked on her small flashlight, its beam slicing through dust and cobwebs. The air grew colder as she descended, each step echoing like a heartbeat against concrete. When she reached the bottom, she paused. A muffled metallic clang sounded in the distance. Someone else was down there. She drew her flashlight tight against her chest and moved cautiously through the narrow passage. Pipes snaked overhead. Water dripped rhythmically. The smell of rust and damper thickened with every step. Then she saw him. Officer Evan Rourke stood ahead, his back turned, kneeling beside a large, grated floor panel. He worked quickly, prying at something beneath the grate. His hood was down this time, and his limp was unmistakable. "Evan!" Leah called out softly. His head snapped up. For a moment, shock crossed his face, then fear. Deep, bone-deep fear. "Leah, you shouldn't be here," he whispered. Each word trembled. "They're watching everything now." "No cameras reach this far," she said. "You knew I'd come." He exhaled shakily and sat back on his heels. "I try to keep you out of it." "Out of what?" Rourke didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid the grate aside and motioned her closer. Leah approached cautiously, crouching beside him. Beneath the grate was a narrow horizontal shaft, fresh scrape marks lining the sides. The same type Hale disappeared into. Rourke rubbed his temples. Rowan wasn't investigating just finances. He found the side contracts, the ones paying off select staff to move things through the prison undetected. Leah's jaw tightened. "Contraband." "Not just contraband," Rourke said. "Data, documents, even people. Quiet transfers arranged through dummy accounts. Someone high up used Goulburn as a distribution point." The gravity of it struck Leah. This wasn't petty smuggling. This was systemic, organized, shielded, protected. "And Hale found evidence?" she asked. Rourke nodded. He confronted the wrong person. He turned up missing 2 days later. "Who took him?" Leah pressed. Rourke's voice lowered to a whisper. "Not who. What?" Leah stiffened. "Talk." Rourke swallowed hard. "There's an off-books unit, deep in the old East Wing. They use it to hold people temporarily, people who know too much. People they plan to move out quietly. Maintenance staff, auditors, anyone who might expose the network." Leah's stomach twisted. "Rowan Hale is down here?" Before Rourke could answer, a harsh static crackled through the tunnels. Then a voice, cold, controlled, and unmistakably familiar, echoed through the darkness. "Sergeant Cray. Officer Rourke. Step away from the shaft." Leah spun. Superintendent Marcus Doyle stood at the end of the passage, flanked by 2 armed officers. Behind him, the man in the gray suit waited with the stillness of a hunter who had already predicted every move his prey would make. Rourke rose slowly, hands trembling. "Mark, don't do this." Doyle's expression didn't change. "You were warned, Evan. You both were." The man in the suit stepped forward. "This could have ended cleanly, but you forced our hand." Leah's mind raced. She couldn't win a standoff in a tunnel with 2 armed men. But she could buy time. "You're hiding people," she said sharply. "That won't stay buried." The man's eyes narrowed. "Everything stays buried down here." He raised a hand. One of the officers aimed at Rourke. Rourke whispered, "Run." Leah didn't think. She moved. She shoved Rourke into the shaft opening just as the officer fired. The shot cracked through the tunnel, ricocheting off metal. Rourke slid down the shaft, vanishing into darkness, a cry echoing as he disappeared. Leah dove after him, grabbing the grate and hurling herself through the opening. Another shot exploded behind her. Then she was falling, slammed into cold metal as she slid deep into the shaft. She heard Doyle shouting orders. Boots hammered against concrete. The tunnel filled with echoes of pursuit. Leah landed hard, pain searing through her shoulder. She scrambled up, heart thundering. Rourke was a few yards ahead, limping but alive. "We have to keep moving," he yelled. Behind them, flashlights flickered in the darkness. Guards were coming. And deeper inside the shaft system, something else waited. A place the prison didn't list on any map. The off-books unit. The place Rowan Hale disappeared into. The place everyone who knew the truth eventually ended up. As Leah and Rourke plunged into the uncharted dark, she felt it. She wasn't running toward answers. She was running toward the heart of a secret built inside the most secure prison in Australia. And whatever she found there would change everything.